Now, fascism is a political system, and there are symbols. The symbol of International Fascism can be looked up in any dictionary or encyclopedia, is a bundle of rods. It's an old Roman symbol, a bundle of rods with a hatchet in the middle of it. And the axe blade is usually protruding from the bundle of rods. And that symbol is called the fasci, from which we get the word fascism, the political system. But worrisome, more worrisome than that, is why that very symbol of the fasci, the international symbol for world fascism, what's it doing on the United States Congress at the back? Of all the thousands of symbols that this so-called on paper democracy could use, we find the symbols of world fascism. We find that it's a very old story. The ancient Druids divided themselves into three classes: Ovates, Bards, and the High Druids. We find that the flags of the Commonwealths and the flags of the world are also striated into three often, because it's the Masonic three, and the symbols on them are Masonic, should anybody make a study of symbolism and heraldry. We find that organizations like Scientology use the double triangle, the serpentine S, and the black and white. They also use the checkerboard on their ties. And the two triangles represent the 33rd degree. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry. ABC Towers in Los Angeles is two triangles interlocking, making a Star of David. One of the most important symbols of the country of America is the eagle, the great eagle of America. But what we know is that in astrology, that relates to the constellation of Scorpio. Scorpio is known as the Scorpion, but in ancient times, the biggest constellation in Scorpio, which is still there, you can see it on any planisphere, was the eagle. So that is why America, which was born in Cancer, the sign of Cancer, but it also likes to generate or associate itself with scorpionic energy, which rules power and money and big wealth. Aquila, the eagle. And in corporate logos, corporate imagery, we'll often see this motif not only of the wings of the eagle, but of the background of the night sky or the day sky being used to represent something subliminally to us. We find that the Pentagon, for instance, the center of the warfare and the military, was actually designed by secret society people. John Whiteside Parsons, who helped to design the Pentagon, was a high priest in the OTO. OTO is Ordo Templi Orientis, an ancient German secret society which descends from the Thule Society. And the OTO are the funders and the patrons of the Skull and Bones Society of Yale University. And it was a high-degreed member of the OTO that helped to design the occult design of the Pentagon. If you put the arms back onto a pentagon, you'll make a pentagram, a well-known symbol in magic. And of course we see the generals and the tanks and the hellish machines of war and the flags all showing the pentagram. In other shows in this series we've gone into that in greater depth. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was raised as a master mason in 1911 at the Holland Lodge No. 8 in New York. And in 1929 he became a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason at Albany Consistory. He would have been aware, as all high-ranking Scottish Rite Masons who had read Albert Pike's Moral and Dogmas, that the pentagonal shape or pentacle was associated by Pike with the Masonic blazing star, and in turn identified with the five-pointed star of ancient Egypt, Sirius. The groundbreaking ceremony for the Pentagon happened to be on September 11th, 1941. Those of you who have watched already the Weapons of Mass Deception, Behind the New World Order, and Atlantis, Alien Visitation, and Genetic Manipulation will know the impact of that and the concept of the laying of these monuments and stones and cityscapes. As David Oveson in his fine book, The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, has brought out, there's something going on here in the cities of the world. There's an occult agenda. He found 23 complete zodiacs in Washington, D.C. secreted into the architecture there, and over 1,000 zodiacal and other planetary symbols. So on paper we're laughed at if we believe in astrology and anything metaphysical, and yet here we have the leaders of the land, the founding fathers, literally encoding into the design of their cities the most profound occult symbols. Now Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval in their book Talisman, like David Oveson, have brought out that the very timing was important. The laying of the stones was precisely timed to the constellations and to the aspects and conjunctions of certain planets like Sirius and the Sun and Jupiter and Saturn. The very moment that the stones were laid of the Capitol building and the Washington Monument, the very dropping of these stones, the processions through the city streets by the Freemasons who were doing this, were all based on stellar and cosmological occurrences. And Washington, D.C. is not the only example. But the fact that it does have an obelisk from Egypt and a oval office, and how the buildings are aligned to the horizon, to compass points and celestial anomalies, is very important. And how this is not a new thing, but a very ancient thing, the building of these monuments and the power that they help to generate. David Oveson even shows us something amazing. He says that in Egypt, when you wanted to draw the symbol for the star Sirius, you used an obelisk, you used a 5-pointed star, and you used a little oval symbol. That was the hieroglyphic for the star Sirius, which is in Cancer. There's the symbol on the right of your screen. But what do we find in concrete, in the layout of Washington, D.C.? We find a pentagram in the form of the Pentagon. We find the obelisk, that's the Washington Monument, and lo and behold, we find the oval and the Oval Office. We even find that the shadow, just like something in Indiana Jones, the shadow of the phallic, masculine obelisk will follow and go up the river and almost touch the Oval Office. And in the Oval Office we find a carpet that has oak leaf motifs on it. Oak leaves from the old Druids. One of the most beloved symbols of Freemasonry is the compass and rule and the letter G. But just be aware, you'll find that symbol in many other places in a Freemasonic lodge where it belongs. You'll find it, for instance, in imagery of banks and insurance agencies and corporations and on posters. You'll also see the symbol of the key, which relates to Vatican intelligence and Roman Catholic secret societies, not in any way connected to Roman Catholicism as a religion, by the way. It made a big difference. I have to, again, emphasize that. There's a big difference between Roman Catholicism as a religion and Vatican as a state within a state, ruled by a Swiss guard. The Masonic G and the compass is used in the Acura car company. That little symbol of theirs that appears to be an A is in fact not an A, it is a Masonic compass. And the word Acura is a very important word. You'll notice that over 70% of the products and 70% of the different brand names and logos that you'll see in this world don't mean anything in English. The names, the words, don't mean anything in English. I mean, you just have to open your fridge or take an educated drive down a boulevard or into the shopping mall and look at the products that you buy, and you'll find that a great deal of them don't have names that mean anything in English. Now, you'd think a merchant would want to communicate as easily as possible to his demographic, to the people who are going to buy his product. But yet, in fact, the designers have a different idea. And Acura is a word that's very ancient. It comes from the word for Mercury. The god Mercury was accuracy, the word when we're very accurate. Mercury was the god of accuracy and precision. Remember, he was the fastest god. We looked at the third degree and how important that was for Freemasons and how it impacts our modern world, the 3 levels. We also find that those levels are often called the red and the blue degrees. Those familiar with Freemasonry know that they have a thing called the blue degrees of Freemasonry. And that's why a certain color of blue is often used on many flags of the world, especially those of the mega political structures like NATO, United Nations, and the European Union, and so on. A certain color of blue also turns up in a great majority of corporate logos, and we need to pay attention to colors and how they're used. I'm not saying that every corporation in the world is using this or is connected to Freemasonry, but when we're dealing with symbolic literacy, we must be aware that some of them are. And we have to be able to decode some of the symbolism that they're using. For instance, the $sign that we used to relate to money, especially in America, is the old symbol for scourge or whip, that which keeps man under control. That symbol is very ancient, and it actually meant the scourge. And if you look up the word scourge in a dictionary, it'll mean the whip or the yoke that which binds and controls the slave. But the symbol goes before that even. It's actually a symbol that relates to the goddess Isis, the goddess of the moon. And since a lot of coins were made from silver, and silver is related to the moon, and the goddess of the moon was Isis, so today we have the symbol for money being the old silver symbol coming out of Isis, the letters of her name compressed together, or when you collapse them together. Freemasons have what they call the floor of the house. We'll often hear that term being used in government also, the floor of the house. And it always is usually a checkerboard motif. On the right you'll see the interior of a Grand Masonic Lodge, and there is the floor of the house. And the checkerboard motif is often found on the hats of the police of the world. Certainly it is the case in Britain, but I know that in America some of the hats have the checkerboard motif. That's just to let you know who they're officiating for. And the very black and white of the cars, the police cars in America, the black and white, the coloring has a source. There's George Washington with his under the G for Freemasonry, standing on the checkerboard, and he's standing in a 90-degree angle. It's very important to understand that there are laws, as we said earlier on, for the Freemasons that they obey, and there's a different set of laws, outside the lodge. This was brought out in the Los Angeles Times in 2000 in a certain report which says first arrests of officers expected in rampant probe. Of course, we know about all the scandals down there, and the federal lawsuits are ongoing to the Los Angeles police, the violations that they've been up to. But if we actually read the article, it says that according to one source, district attorney's officials do not plan to give the three an opportunity to surrender themselves to authorities today. And the reason why they're not being allowed to surrender, they're going to be arrested, the source said. They're not part of the brotherhood. They're not part of any fraternity. They're going to be arrested like anybody else. Los Angeles Times, front page. That's right. You're not part of the brotherhood. You're going to be treated like anybody else. Of course, if you're part of the lodge, then papers go missing. We'll let the Keystone Cops loose. People will be tripping over each other. Nobody knows anything. You're free as a bird to go on and commit the next series of crimes. Okay? That's the way the game is played. So innocuously in Camel or in various games, video games, what have you, when you see the checkered floor, just pay attention. It's been used on us a lot. Here in the Beatles symbol for Abbey Road, the walking on the black and white squares is a patently Masonic symbol showing you who they work for and who created the Beatles. And also the very fact that they're dressed as if they're going to a funeral has been noted by certain critics. Lots of symbolism involved here. But even innocuous car advertisements, like this one for the Chevrolet. Here's another one for a bank. The only symbol they're using is the checkered floor. And that's where we get the term like square deal, or we'll treat you fair and square. It all came from the Masonic Lodge, that when you used to say that to a fellow Mason, in order to get their business, you'd say on the phone to them, so out of earshot or so that other people wouldn't realize it, you'll be treated fair and square here. Of course, later on it just got picked up in normal society and we use it today. But there's lots of terms like being on the square and being given the third degree and breaking the law. Here you see the Exon symbol, but the Exon symbol has the double X, and the double X is called the Cross of Lorraine, a unique system. It's the double cross of the Knights of Malta cross. It's more specifically called the Cross of Lorraine because many secret societies, especially the Priory de Zion and the Grand Orient French Freemasonic system, come out of the province of Lorraine in France. Lots of secret societies operate from there. It's one of the reasons why students of the assassination of Martin Luther King might pay attention to the fact that he was shot in what was called the Lorraine Motel. I mean, it's obvious that that was a conspiracy, but it goes even beyond that. There's symbolism being used to let you know who did it. They leave calling cards to these individuals if you know how to decode what's going on. If you don't, well, then you just chase after the local mafia boss and you chase after the local lone gunman, and basically nothing ever changes in our world. Now, what is an exon? Not only do they have the double cross of Lorraine, showing who they are, but what is an exon? That's another word that doesn't mean anything in English. An exon is like a page. There you see him on the right. He's a court-appointed page. He does the bidding of the royals. So Exxon Corporation, are they doing the bidding of the royals? Could they be connected to the British royal family and perhaps Dutch Royal Shell? That's right, Shell gas stations, their full name is Dutch Royal Shell, descending from the Queen of England through the House of Hanover and through the House of Orange. The Cross of Lorraine. The Cross of the Lorraine was also used in the French Second World War by the French as the underground symbol. Some people who've been involved in the Second World War will recognize that symbol because it was a symbol used by the French underground. And history would just love us to believe that the French underground just happened to pop into existence during the Second World War, and of course just vanished and fizzled fell off the back pages of history after the war. Well, that's not true. As Lady Queensborough and Nedster Webster and the other original turn-of-the-century researchers into secret societies proved, the French underground has always been around. They're not just a French underground, they're the underground. That these black market cabals and underground movements existed all over the world for all time. It just had happened that during the time when the Nazis were loose, the governments of the West could use the underground networks. But they've been around for a long period of time. Here on another corporate logo you see the term with a double X, the double cross. One of the other beloved symbols of the Freemasons, the most powerful of them, is the Knights of Malta cross. That's that black cross, and in the middle you see a symbol with a cross and a cross inside a crown. The cross and the crown. We even have cross and crown Lutheran churches out there. And this symbol of the cross and the crown will be found on churches, on hospitals, on many organizations and symbols. Here it is on the grave of Charles Taze Russell, who is none other than the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, and he was also the founder of the Watchtower magazine. Watchtower is a symbol of the Knights of Columbus, or the Knights of Malta. Always use the symbol of the tower, just like a piece of, in chess you have the towers. Well, here's Charles Taze Russell buried under an Illuminati pyramid with the Roman wreath and the cross and the crown, literally telling you who the Jehovah's Witnesses really morphed out of and who funded the rise of that power. Most Jehovah's Witnesses in the world could never tell you that their leader was a member of powerful European secret societies. And who are the Russell Trust? Here on Cal State brochure for the opening of the school quarter, it's loaded with secret society symbols of Maltese crosses and crosses of Lorraine and Illuminati pyramids and keys and keyholes and whatnot, and globes. But of course, if you're not educated and symbol literate in these matters, it all just looks like nice design. Here's the Knights of Columbus symbol, and you see the fascist symbol in the middle there, just in case you think that they're hiding this. It's all in plain sight. It's a very ancient symbol. On the left you see from Sumeria, the Knights of Malta cross. On the right, from the Scottish Picts, you not only see the swastika, but the Knights of Malta cross and the serpent. Those who've read my book, Atlantis, Alien Visitation and Genetic Manipulation, or have seen that program in the series will know exactly where the tie-in is there with the serpent symbol to the cults and secret societies of the modern world and the governments of the modern world, and how that plays in. Interestingly, this Knights of Malta cross turns up on the fascist flag of the Nazi Party, and so it should, because they're only too happy to tell you who funded the Nazi Party of Germany. Didn't Himmler always refer to the Nazis as a black lodge, as an order of knights, as a knightly brotherhood? The way they dressed and the way that they operated their army should show you that, using ancient symbols. But they're happy to use the oak leaves as well. There's the Knights of Malta cross. Where did that symbol come from? We think it's a Nazi symbol. It's not. Where did the skull and bones symbol come from? The skull and bones symbol is a very ancient symbol. It was used by the pirates of the British Empire. Long before the Nazis got hold of it, we have the pirates on the high seas going to conquer all of the worlds. We've got the eagle, the Roman eagle. Don't believe it? what's it doing on the top of the Queen of England's crown, the Knights of Malta cross? Because she is the head of the Order of the Knights of Malta. The Sovereign Military Order of Malta, their flag is red and white. There's a red background and a white cross. Exactly the same colors and motifs that you find on the national coat of arms of Switzerland. We find it on the red cross, so-called charity. And on St. George's Cross of England, the same colors are used. Basically came out of the group called the Knights of St. John Hospitallers. When the Freemasons and secret societies of France were purged by the Vatican powers, the Knights Templar sort of disappeared for a while and re-emerged as a group called the Knights of St. John Hospitallers, and they used these colors. Later it turned out to be, when they went to Malta, they re-emerged as the Knights of Malta. And the Red Cross is completely owned by them, as is Switzerland. All those bank accounts and the hidden banks, of course. And the headquarters of World Freemasonry is actually in Switzerland. It's in Zurich. And you can go there and you look over the door and you'll see in Latin the words ordo ab chaos, which means order out of chaos. Again, they're happy to tell you how their Leviathan moves forward, how they achieve their world goals. It's by creating so much foment and upheaval in the world and then bringing in the order that everybody's craving for. But of course, when there's war and upheaval, you also need to be monitoring what's going on. So all you do is you create the charities. You create the Greenpeaces and the Red Crosses of the world who can just go in and spy, do all your spying for you and everything else. Nobody in the wide world thinking that these charities have an ancestry, that they come from the 13th century, that they are funded by secret society money, that they purvey all manner of intoxicants and drugs. No, these histories are kept from us. We read that research into the current role of the Knights of Malta and its individual members is just beginning. The most serious problem is the dearth of documents available due to the extreme secrecy of the organization. Except for a few scattered references in various books, magazines, and newspapers, and a few romanticized stories about ancient glories of the order, the necessary amount of materials has not yet surfaced. We'll find those colors and those symbols and logos on many of the flags of the world. In fact, it is a case in point that any Commonwealth country, or in fact any country of the world, can't just legally create their own flag or coat of arms. Guess where they send to it? To the Charter House in London. One house in London designs all the flags and attributes all the colors and flags to the countries of the world. So much for sovereignty and independence. Yeah, you may be sovereign in name only to confuse the people of the country. Now, magistrates, chancellors, and Queen's Council also wear the symbols. In ancient days, you'd remember that when the death sentence was passed in court, the judge would put on a black cloth on his head, a square of black cloth. Because in order to pronounce death over you, he had to wear the black square. The judge would put that over his head. That's the Freemason symbol, the black square. The black and white squares. Now you're on the black square. You've gone into the crime, but the Freemasons are saying they're going to take your life from you. In America, it is now habit that when you get sworn in as a citizen of the country, it's done in a Masonic hall. Many, many times that happens where the swearing of allegiance, in fact, the very hand over the heart or the raising of the right hand, they're not Christian symbols. Open any Freemasonic book showing the rites and rituals of Freemasonry, like the Duncan's ritual, and you'll see that symbol and those symbols. They have nothing to do with Christianity. Xilinx Corporation, using the Knights of Malta cross, the Red Cross. Here's the Knights Templar cross on Alfa Romeo, the Italian company. But on the right, we see a very strange symbol of a dragon eating a man, eating a human being. So from old Mexican codex, we see the same image. Who is the dragon that's devouring the human being? And more importantly, why does the president of Italy have the same image in his garden? The black serpent crowned, devouring a human being. We got some questions here. Now the serpent symbol is used a lot. The reptilian symbol is also used in corporate logos like Sobe, the drink. But Sobe is an Egyptian word. It actually is Sobek with a K at the end, but it was also pronounced Sobe. And Sobe was the reptilian crocodile god of ancient Egypt. One of the ancient orders of the world used to refer to the Knights of Malta cross as the Black Sun. So when you see that Knights of Malta cross, it was often shown with or it was even referred to as the Black Sun. Well, the Black Sun just happens to be the symbol of the Smithsonian Institute. And as people who've studied and researched the Nazi movement will tell you, they used to refer to their swastika also as the Black Sun. Here on Bracken House in London City, you see the Black Sun and the Zodiac. We can walk past these symbols every day in the architecture and never question for 1 minute what on earth they mean. Now, the Knights of Columbus symbol turns up on Arco Corporation. That little symbol that they use is the Knights of Malta symbol, and Arco is an old word, a very old word. Again, it doesn't mean anything in English, and conventionally it means, Atlantic Richfield Oil Company, what have you. But there's always double, triple layers, tertiary and secondary meanings to these logos and symbols that they put out in the public domain. The word Arco is Latin, and it comes from the word for fallen angel. Look up in a Latin dictionary, Archon or Arco, and it will tell you that it means the fallen angels. And the symbol is the pyramid seen from above. If you look at the Arco symbol, you will see that it is the Giza pyramid with a missing capstone. As we said, the Freemasons, the Illuminati are very involved with pyramids. But taken in a two-dimensional format, it's the Knights of Malta cross. Another very important symbol in Freemasonry is the dove. You'll often see Christians using it, thinking that it is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. Actually, the Liberal Democrats in England also use it as the symbol of their party, and also Greenpeace, you'll remember, used the symbol of the dove. But we'll find that along with the Knights of Malta cross, the dove has a very ancient secret society connection. Here it is on the maces of the Queen of England. The connection is betrayed when you understand that the old word for dove in Latin countries was columb or Columbus or Columbine, the columb. So the District of Columbia, Columbia Pictures, Columbia in South America, where it just happens that all the drugs come from. Let's wonder who really owns Columbia. British Columbia, or the Columbia Shuttle, or even Columbine High School. These names mean something. They mean the doves. The dove is a secret society symbol. But it gets even more sinister than that. In Freemasonry, one of the characters in World Freemasonry was called Cagliostro. Giuseppe Balsamo, who was a secret society individual roaming Europe. But he invented for Freemasonry what was called the Egyptian Rite, Cagliostro's Egyptian Rite. This is a man who was very close to the family of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette and what have you. But he was a top Freemason, and he invented an Egyptian rite. Within that rite, he had what was, they used, the high priests were not adults, they were young boys and young girls, young children that were involved in these Masonic rites. And they were known in that Masonic rite as the colombs, or the young doves. Now, is there a connection perhaps to the sacrifice that took place at Columbine High School in the sign of Aries, and the young doves being used as sacrificial slaves? Were they being marked for death, like soldiers are marked for death? Because when you wear the oak leaves and the Knights of Malta cross, you may think, oh yes, very handsome, all of this decoration on the uniforms of the soldiers of the world, and then they're marched off to a particular location on the planet Earth to be slaughtered. This all has to do with being marked for death by these symbols. You find the oak leaves on the Russian lapels of the Russian army. You'll find them on the hats of the French. You'll find the oak leaves on the floor of the Oval Office, and you'll even find the little oak acorns on the hats of the cavalry that in America were fighting during the Civil War. Being marked for death and ritual death is something very important. August 31st, 1997, there was a ritual death. Lady Spencer from England was assassinated, murdered in Paris, a ritual center, right at the Palace de Alma, in a huge rite. Now, the truth of these ritual crimes was exposed by author Stephen Knight in his book, The Brotherhood, which he spoke of Freemasonry. He also says that the Jack the Ripper murders, we know that those took place 100 years to the day on August the 31st. And Stephen Knight has exposed that the Jack the Ripper murders were funded, called into being, orchestrated by the British royal family, and that there were ritual deaths of young Catholic women in a ritual death. And there's also a movie which is a little hard to find, but it is called Murder by Decree, which will tell you the whole story. Stephen Knight died 2 years after the writing of that book. One of the other secret societies operating very much in a American context, it's called the Bohemian Club or the Bohemian Society. And their symbol is the owl. However, if we examine a dollar bill, we've already found it filled with secret society symbols, but up near the one on the right-hand corner, secreted there amongst the webs, is a little owl. So it's in all dollar bills. And that is the owl of the Bohemian Club or the Bohemian Society, a super elite steering committee, a steering group within the secret society apparatus. And all the presidents of America will attend the Bohemian Grove north of San Francisco during the summer solstice and do rituals there. There's a whole study of the Bohemian Society. And their symbol, the owl, is on the dollar bill. They say that they worship the owl because the owl, of course, can see things in the dark. But it goes back to the ancient Babylonian cult of Minerva. Minerva, the goddess Minerva, who was symbolized by the owl. One of their other most beloved symbols is the rose. Freemasons and Rosicrucians will use the rose, but of course that symbol comes from the Tudor dynasty. The Tudor dynasty, as we saw in Atlantis, Alien Visitation, the Tudor dynasty funded a lot of these secret societies from the 15th century onwards, and their symbol was the Tudor rose. That's why there's rose gardens in very close proximity to all of the houses of parliament or the government buildings. You'll find the rose garden in which the dignitaries and the officials will walk, and the rose bowl. Certain bands, like the Grateful Dead, make great use of the rose, and we haven't got time in this program to go into all the details about individual bands, but the secret society connections of this band have been well brought out, why it is that they use the skeleton and the skull of the Knights Templar and the red rose of the Bohemian Club and the Rosicrucians. Their members have also been seen at the Bohemian Grove, but Lancome and many other technical companies will use the symbol of the rose. It'll just be there innocuously, and people will wonder, what on earth is this rose doing on this corporate logo here? Viagra used the red rose because it's controlled by Pfizer, a very powerful company in the world. Here you see the flower coming out of the world, and all around it are the cosmetic companies of the world, all united, all joined. We spoke a little earlier on of the pirates and how the British royal family, the Tudor dynasty specifically, used the pirates to spread their tentacles and take their empire, their colonialization to all parts of the world. And the word pirates means the men of fire. And the symbol that the pirates used, of course, was the skull and bones, which later we find in America, because the pirates or pirates served the Tudor dynasty. They were headed by men like Sir Francis Drake and Edmund Spenser. The progeny of the pirates settled on the lands that they conquered and opened the great universities. That's the Ivy League universities, for the education of their sons and daughters. All right? Because once you've colonized a place and slaughtered everybody else, you want to maintain control, and you can't do that in just one lifetime. You have to set up an elite school system so that your own children will be the next generation of elites to rule. And of course, you must employ a fraternity structure to ensure that only the chosen will be exposed to the real occult history of the world. Because you don't want the common man, of course, finding out any of this. You want to keep them in line. Overworld and underworld figures, educated and funded to adroitly lead the rest of mankind down whatever roads become necessary. Sir Francis Drake was one of the pirates. So when they put these swashbuckling sagas and romantic versions of the pirates in front of you, just realize that these leaders of the pirates were royal dynasty ambassadors, were trained in the most advanced maritime universities of the world, and were moneyed. You know, you just don't happen to buy a ship and take it out under the high seas. Now the Ivy League universities, Yale for instance, what is a Yale? A Yale is an old hybrid creature. A chimera, a hybrid, a genetically hybridized animal. And the logo of Yale University's most powerful secret society is they have many secret societies there, and the most powerful one is called the Skull and Bones Lodge, the Brotherhood of Death, and it's known as Lodge 322. And it shows the old pirate symbol. That's where it comes from, because they're the descendants of the Tudor dynasties and the other House of Plantagenet and the other dynasties of Europe, coming out of Portugal and Spain and the world. And it's called Lodge 322. Here on a Nike corporation, if you look very carefully, Of course, this bizarre advertisement doesn't even have the Nike logo. It doesn't even have a symbol. The kids are able to discern. But if you look carefully at the flames on the left-hand side, you'll see the number 322 secreted into it, letting you know who's behind Nike. Here in Porto, Portugal, is the headquarters of the Bacardi company. They're out of South America, but one of their headquarters is in Portugal. And 15-foot high flames, you see the word Bacardi, and of course their symbol is the bat, the vampire bat dripping blood. And one would ask, why on earth would they use that symbol? When you realize that the Bacardi family and the Bronfman family and the Onassis family and a horde of other families that are behind the purveyance of alcohol and the purveyance of drugs and opium are again sanctioned and funded, all this information exists, by the royal dynasties and the royal houses. They were descendants of the old pirates and buccaneers who came and brought disease and genocide to the world so that later they could revel in their fortunes. And of course they're happy to tell you, if you know how to decode the corporate ads, the corporate logos, you'll see the connection of the pirates to alcohol and spirits and also to fashion. The fashion industry, using the skull and bones motif. Because these individuals were the traders. The Russell Trust, the Hudson Bay Company, the East India Company, which were fronted by the pirates, were sent into countries to rape and rend, to slaughter everybody there, and to then take the livestock, to go and hunt. So those trappers, again romantically put before us as these trappers making their way into the Yukon and up the Hudson River, these were just agents working for the Russell Trust. It's as simple as that, and the documentation is there to prove it. And of course, when you take animals, you take their skins, that becomes the fur trade. You take their meat, that becomes the furrier trade and the meat trade. But as a byproduct of certain animals comes the musk. So from that came a lot of the cosmetic corporations. By the time that the animals' bodies were taken into Europe, into the city center and processed, they realized that a handy byproduct of the death of these animals was the musk, which would be used in cosmetics for women. And that's one of the reasons why you see London, Paris, New York written on most cosmetics, because the families ruled from these places that they were colonizing. In Freemasonry, as we said, you have the third degree, but you also hear about a thing called the red and blue degrees. Well, that's why we have red light districts and blue movies. The very terms tell you who's controlling it. It's the Freemasonic degrees, are called the blue and the red degrees of Freemasonry. And you'll see those colors a little bit later. Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, was a member of an order called the Ancient Order of the Tiger, because within Freemasonry there's many subcategories and suborders. And on the left there you see what looks like just a normal corporate logo, until you realize that those striations, you see a globe with these striations on it, please understand that that is a claw mark. What you're actually seeing there, like the one below, is a very clear example when you know what you're looking at. It's a claw mark, it's a print mark of a bear or of a tiger, because these are secret society logos and slogans that are being used about the grip of the tiger encircling the world, that the secret societies have the whole world in their grasp through the corporate power that they operate. Here you see the symbol of on the right, the 3 sixes. A lot of Christian groups are aware of this, that the Trilateral Commission's symbol is the 3 sixes. At the bottom you see the gateway symbol. Gateway computers, there's 3 interlocking symbols. In fact, that one was so blatant they had to end up changing it. But the Federal Reserve Board also using the 3 sixes. We talked about Cecil Rhodes and his Round Table organization coming out of England, a think tank and a funder of major secret societies. One of the organizations that they immediately created was the Royal Institute of International Affairs, that then goes on to be the parent company or organization behind the American Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission. Now, the Council on Foreign Relations is the secret government of America, really. Of its 262 members, many are journalists and correspondents and communication executives. And this ties in with what the theme of this program is, that here we have the secret society connection to the media. For instance, Lawrence Tisch is the CEO of CBS, John Welsh, the CEO of NBC, Thomas Murphy, the CEO of ABC, George Gruen of Reader's Digest, CEO, Catherine Graham, Washington Post, Newsweek, Associated Press, Saul Linowitz, Time Magazine, Then Dan Rather, Bill Moyers, Tom Brokaw, David Brinkley, Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, Ted Koppel, Robert McNeil, Jim Lehrer of PBS, the public stations in America, David Gergen, and William F. Buckley of National Review. Those names may be unfamiliar to you if you live outside America, but every American knows those names. Now, of course, they'll appear to you in public on the theater, on the carnival stage of the television, and they'll be a Republican, and this one will be a Democrat, and they'll be at each other's throats, and they'll, be showing you that they all have these allegiances on the street level. But when we actually find, they're all shaking hands behind the scenes. They all belong to the same secret society. And that's who they're taking their orders from. Congressman John R. Rarick, who's on to the game, he says that the CFR, dedicated to one world government, financed by a number of the largest tax-exempt foundations and wielding such power and influence over our lives in the areas of finance, business, labor, military, education, and mass communication media, should be familiar to every American concerned with good government and with preserving and defending the U.S. Constitution and our free enterprise system. Yet, the nation's right-to-know machinery, the news media, usually so aggressive in exposures to inform our people, remain conspicuously silent when it comes to the CFR, its members, and their activity. Yes, but if there's some drag queen operating in a corner of the town, or some other petty fraud going on down at the local mechanics or at the local coffee shop, you can bet that the whole slew of cameras will be down there uncovering it. Now, Rear Admiral Chester Ward, who's a former member of the CFR for 16 years, and he should know, he said the most powerful clique in these elitist groups have one objective in common. They want to bring about the surrender of the sovereignty of the national independence of the United States. A secret clique of international members in the CFR comprises the Wall Street international bankers and their key agents. Primarily, they want a world banking monopoly from whatever power ends up in the control of global government. Katharine Graham, in her own words, speaking at the CIA headquarters in 1988, she says, "We live in a dirty and dangerous world. There are some things the general public does not need to know and shouldn't. I believe democracy flourishes when the government can take legitimate steps to keep its secrets, and when the press can decide whether to print what it knows." Well, wait a minute, how come we weren't in on all of this? We were thinking that democracy means the freedom and the right to know. Well, that was America, wasn't it, in the 50s and the 40s? What happened? Not only is this vile creature letting you know, misinterpreting the concept of democracy, but she fails to tell you that from the sequestering and from these people's complicity and from their silence, that the world becomes a dirty and a dangerous place. But as I've been telling you all along in this series, we're not inventing anything. We're not conspiracy freaks or conspiracy nuts. It's from the horse's mouth. I bring you the documentation of the people themselves. Here she's saying, democracy can be limited. The government has the right to tell the people what it pleases, and the people can do nothing about it. Their media does not serve them. David Rockefeller, with the same condescending tone in his address to the Trilateral Commission in 1991, talking about how the media is in his pocket, he says, "We are grateful to the Washington Post and New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards world government." Thank you, he's saying. We had to keep it secret because if the people smelled a rat, we'd have been ousted long ago. That's why we're secret, because it smells to high heaven. But thank you, you free democratic press, for covering it up, for hiding our criminality. Now we've got the world in our pocket. We have a one world order, and it's so close people can do nothing about it except part the Red Sea, move out of the way. Now you'll get your prizes. Now you'll get your awards. Now you can retire. So now that we know a little bit about who's doing what to whom, and if you're interested in that subject, please make use of the other programs in this series for a more thorough analysis. But we want to come full circle and again look at how they're doing it, what devices are being used. Jean Kilbourne, in her book Can't Buy Me Love, talks about the power of archetypes and how many advertising agents make use of those. She says the Jolly Green Giant, the Michelin Man, the Man from Glad, Aunt Jemima, Alka-Seltzer, the White Knight, these are all and their otherworldly kin are descendants of earlier gods. That's right. We may look at them as little cartoon characters and think it's humorous and funny, but those are stereotypical examples of very powerful, they embody powerful archetypes. As Walt Disney was aware of this in a positive way and used it for the uplift of mankind, you can also use archetypes like that for a very negative purpose. And when we turn to the concept of astrology and how it's being used, we find that it's an old story. In Genesis 1, we read about astrology. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years." So there again, in Christianity, the idea that the stars should be taken for signs. Of course, we know that the constellations up there are just a big mess. So it took some doing to associate certain symbols, like the lion for Leo. Very, very ancient symbols going back many, many millennia. And Friedrich Nietzsche warns us. He says that as long as you still experience the stars as something above your head, you lack the eye of knowledge. And how right he is, because we find stars on the cityscapes of the world, we find them on flags, we find it on heraldry, we find it on coins, on money, on corporate products, on cars, on military. Stars aren't just something above the head. They're very much here in the physical domain, and we need to interpret why they're being used and how. Now, if somebody comes along and says that astrological, astrotheological, Sabian motifs are being used by the advertisers, we'll get a laugh. It doesn't seem that obvious. We know that there's 12 signs of the zodiac. And when you say that those are the archive that's being used commonly, people will tend not to believe it, or they'll need convincing. But see, the advertisers are too clever for that. They're not going to keep using and beating it to death. They're not going to keep using the same 12 signs over and over again. They're a little bit more subtle than that. What we have to realize is that, yes, we have the zodiacal belt. The zodiac comes about because the sun moves on a certain path through the sky every day. And back of the sun's movement is a belt of about 17 degrees that's made up of the 12 signs of the zodiac. But in and around those famous signs of the zodiac, the 12 official signs, there are many other constellations. I mean, you only have to look up and see how many stars there are in the sky. So the 12 constellations are not the only ones that are up there and that were known from ancient times. And some of them are very, very important. And to the old magicians and old astronomers and astrologers, those who built the cities and the temples of the world, these other constellations were very important. We find that there were 88 constellations in all, not 12, near and around the ecliptic. So you have the zodiacal belt, as I was saying. You have the Earth and it's surrounded by the zodiacal belt, but in and around that belt are many other constellations, about 88 prominent ones. As I said, the Magi of old were very aware of the power of the zodiac and even designed their cities according to it. We heard about Washington, D.C. Here's the plan of Paris city center with the Champs-Élysées. And there you can see the 12 radiating spokes, 12 based on the zodiac. The whole of Paris is a Masonic layout. And we all know our own star signs. There you see the star signs on the left, and they all have symbols associated with them. And also on the right, you'll see a bunch of other symbols. Those symbols are the planetary rulers of the signs. So you know if you're in Aries, then your planetary ruler is Mars. America is born under Cancer, so it's ruled by the moon, and so on. On the right, you'll see the symbols of the planets. Now, advertisers are also very clever. They understand that the astrological signs are divided into 4 categories: fire signs, water signs, air signs, and earth signs. And of course, each of those are used for specific purposes. They're very specific to certain traits of the mind, and they need to be applied correctly. Fire signs are Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. The water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Air signs are Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini. And the earth signs are Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. Now, fire signs will be used by an advertiser when the idea to convey has to do with energy, vitality, zeal, masculinity. Water signs will be used when it's more of a feminine approach, a more subtle approach involving comfort and home and caring and compassion and things like that. And air signs will be used when it's intellectual or has to do with problem solving. There's lots of different modalities. of how these are applied. It's a very interesting schemata. Earth signs are often used when you're trying to involve yourself in the economical world, or when you're talking about the earth, or you're talking about something very tangible. Air often has to do with communication, the communication skills. Air sign symbolism will be used. So there's more permutations than just your common sun sign. Again, I want to emphasize how many flags of the world, nation states, make use of the stars and the crescent moons. Here, the symbols of Soviet Russia turn out to be old Druidic symbols of the sickle and the Masonic gavel and the red star, the star of the Freemasons. Same thing with the California flag. Yes, it shows the bear and the star, but the bear is nothing more than Ursa Major, the bear up there, and the red star is the pole star. Astrology plays a part in movies, like The Magnificent Seven, which is literally based on the 7 planets. And each of the actors, that movie is scripted where even the characteristics, even the mannerisms, and even some of the statements of the characters in that movie, and this is just one small example, are based on the signs of the zodiac and the 7 planets. And if you know what you're watching, you'll be able to decode it, which of the actors represent which of the traits. And of course, they're composite. It's not just a simple matter of one character representing one trait. In movies, it's an art form. So an individual may be a composite of several archetypal characters or characteristics. One archetypal characteristic is the sky itself. Just observe how many corporations and corporate logos use the symbol of the sky in the background. That alone is of interest. Now, the sign of Aries, in the tarot cards, the 4th card, the Emperor, rules Aries. And let's see some of the corporate logos and correspondences to the sign of Aries. We looked at the statue of Lincoln, of course, in his great chair. But we also find in Star Trek the captain at the calm, the commander sitting in his royal chair. And around in that series, you have the great archetypal characters, the 7 main archetypal characters. And then if you compress it, you have the 4 main archetypal characters. And then you have the sign of the Emperor. In Bonanza and in High Chaparral and these other shows, you see the emphasis on mountains and landscape and the ownership of the land, the dominion of the land. This is an Aries motif. And the primal father. Of course, the primal father has no wife, no mother, and there's no women around. It's always the primal sons, the 4 sons. These are archetypes coming out of the ancient world, often having occult ties. Now, the symbol for Aries is the horns of Aries, of course. But that horns of Aries motif we see in the McDonald's symbol. Those golden arches are an occult symbol. It's probably the most powerful franchise, one of the most powerful corporations in the world, and certainly in an American context, and their symbol has been staring us in the face for years, is the horns of Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac, and which is connected to drive and ambition and domination. Discover using the symbol of the sun. Because what is Aries? Aries is the time in where the sun moves from the spring over the horizon. It passes over and comes into the spring. So that's what disk over means. If you actually look at the Discover card, it actually says disk over, and the sun is in the middle. This is an astrological phenomena subliminally being used. The symbol for Mazda is the horns of Aries, stylized. The Hyatt Hotel using the gleam, the little gleam of the sun rising at the horizon. When you raise 2 fingers in the sign of peace, like you used to see the old Winston Churchill doing that, that originally was not the symbol of peace. That's the old Roman symbol for war. And of course, Aries is the god of war. Nissan, the logo for Nissan, also shows you the sun half above and half below the horizon. And what does Nissan mean? Nissan is the Hebrew word for the first month of the year. In their calendar, the first month of the year is called Nissan, and it refers to our Aries, when the sun is half below and half above the meridian of the ecliptic, ready to rise over the horizon. That's where that symbol comes from. And that's where that word comes from. On cosmetics, we'll often see the little Aries sign. And any logo or corporate design where you see the sun either sinking above or rising below the horizon, you're talking the sign of Aries. Like morning star. Who is the morning star? Well, it's the sun that rises in the morning. Mazda, The word Mazda is Ahura Mazda. It's a Persian word that represents the sun. The sun god is Ahura Mazda, the god of light. Here on Lancôme, they're using the symbol of Mars, the ruler of Aries, in their advertisement. It's the phallic symbol of Mars to sell you the product. Here in movies, you'll see the symbol of Mars. In fact, an alchemical version with the solar dot in the middle. As we said, Nike, here you see the flames. That's an Aries symbol because Aries also represents anything to do with fire and flames and volcanoes. And you'll often see advertisements of trucks, going up the sides of mountains, or somebody snowboarding, or some heroic individual free climbing up on El Capitan. Any logo or symbol that shows you mountainscapes or red rocks. Look how the car companies love those red rock canyon motifs. What are the red rocks? What is the red planet? Well, the red planet is Mars, and Mars rules the sign of Aries. But fire, conflagrations, anytime you see the symbol, realize that you're talking astrology. In fact, from the word Aries, we get the English word arise. So the arising of the sun, arise and shine. It meant that's exactly what the sun does on Aries, it arises. Here we have Arise Company, a PC company, aware that their word has other permutations. The symbol of Aries is the ram. Here the new Dodge company. Probably the merchants have no idea, but the designer of their logo is the red ram, the horns of Aries. And of course that horns of Aries can also be stylized to look like that check mark that you see on so many corporate logos and so many advertisements. That red check is also a little apostrophe to represent Aries. We turn to the next sign, Taurus, who in the tarot card, it's represented by the Hierophant, or the Pope, the fifth card of the tarot deck. But Taurus, everyone knows who's a Taurus, is represented by the bull. But before it was the bull, it was actually the cow. And that's from very ancient times, you see the cow as being a sacred symbol. So when you see it on Merrill Lynch, with the sun rays coming from behind the bull, and didn't we say that Taurus represents finances and economy and earthy things, and profit and harvest? That's right, that's why a lot of corporate companies use the symbol of the bull. It's astrological. Gemini. Gemini is the twins. On the left you see a little platinum card, Visa card brochure. Look what you're actually looking at there. The sun and the twins. It's literally astrology. In astrological parlance you call that the sun in Gemini. Well, that's exactly what this designer has shown you, the sun in Gemini. Here you see the Saks Fifth Avenue using the twins, and Wrigley's Spearmint, Wrigley's company constantly use the twins, the twins, the twins, the twins. You'll see lots of advertisements picking up on that, where you'll see identical twins being used for some bizarre reason. Well, it's because it has to do with Gemini, and what Gemini and all of its meanings. We don't have time here to elaborate on every single star sign and all of its meanings, but your unconscious knows all about it. And if a designer uses this, it sells you something. Here we have the syzygy being used by Yves Saint Laurent, and the question of gender dichotomy, the male and the female, and the crossover of identity. That symbol on the right of the screen is the original symbol for Mercury. It's called the lemniscate, and it's found in a lot of corporate logos also. The symbols of Cancer, the mother sign, symbol of the moon. We find it on Cash & Company in California, Realtor Company. The interlocking 69 symbol. Safeway, we also see the 69 symbol of Cancer. And Cancer is the sign associated with mother and comfort and nutrition and security and protection. And of course we have Safeway. Come to our store and shop. We have the Cancer symbol, so that takes care of your unconscious mind. And we're also telling you this is the safe way to come, because Cancer symbolism, as any competent astrologer knows, has exactly to do with that, of nurturement and motherhood. The old symbol for Cancer was the white horse, the unicorn, and its Welcome Company are using the white horse. And they're also going to sell you peace of mind. Here's the new logo. At the bottom shows you the 69 and the 3 striations. But those 69 symbols at the bottom are the old symbol of Cancer. Of course, the symbol of the female is very Cancerian, and also on the left, the symbol of the vagina. Here is Chanel for men. Of course it's for men. And you have the statement for men right in the center of the womb shape. And Chanel actually means channel. You can repronounce that word as channel. What is the channel? It's the female opening. And their particular blurb is, she loves him. She loves Chanel. It's a very powerful symbol of the interlocking circles. Here you have, again, the symbol of the female ovary, the female opening, the vulva. And here the model, who is of course headless, that's pretty common. She's holding the product that she's trying to sell, or the company's trying to sell, at her womb position, which is again very important. And her arms making the symbol of the vesica. That camera company, their particular blurb is, are you digital yet? So just above the female breasts there of Cancer, they're asking you an important question. Are you a robot yet? And the white horse, or the unicorn, the ancient symbol of Cancer. You'll see that on royal heraldry. You'll see that on film corporation logos. You'll find it on Philip Morris Incorporation. The yin-yang symbol is also very close to the Cancer symbol. You find that on Pepsi and on Symantec Corporation. That symbol is Cancerian. But the yin-yang symbol also has a lot of power in itself out of the Far East. Here, Salem, the cigarette manufacturer, are also using it. Leo is, of course, the fire sign ruled by the sun. The 8th card of the tarot rules Leo. And Leo, the famous lion, we find that, of course, on MGM. And the sky as a background lets you know that what you're actually looking at there is nothing more than, or less than, an astrological sign. The symbol of the Sphinx in Egypt is what the tarot card that rules Leo, the 8th card, shows you. The lady and the lion is a reference to the Egyptian Sphinx. The symbol of the Leo is the sun. That's the ruler of the sign of Leo. And the symbol for target is the old ancient astrological symbol for the sun, a circle with a point in it. But we also find that on People magazine. We also find it on Texaco. Not only do they have the pentagram, but they have the symbol of the sun, the red sun. And on Lucent Technologies, the round circle. Shell, which is meant to look like a shell, is actually again the rising sun at the horizon with 8 striations. In the tarot card number 8, the 8th card is the sign of Leo. So here we see 8 rays of light, because these designers understand that 8 is a reference to gold and to the sunlight. That's why the old medieval statement we have saying pieces of 8, especially in context of the pirates. Pieces of 8, pieces of gold, pieces of money. So shell is the rising sun. And in ancient times it was known in astrology that the scallop shell was in fact the symbol of the sun. That's why you'll even see little scallop shell motifs above doorways and above portals, because it was used in times of antiquity in the Renaissance as a symbol for the sun. So in Botticelli's Venus, where of course the female is the Venus, the goddess Venus, she's rising out of the scallop shell. Botticelli, a master symbolist, was merely showing you an astrological conjunction in the sky, not on earth and not in the sea. The sea represents the abyss of the night sky. Venus, the female, is the planet Venus, and the scallop shell is the symbol of the sun. Now that's an astrological conjunction. The conjunction of Venus and the sun, which is known to astrologers to be very beneficial and very pleasing. We also get the word sun, like in Royal Sun Alliance, or in Sun Microsystems, or in Sun Life, or Sun Oil Company. That's probably very important to bring out at this stage, that even though we're looking at the great corporate world and how they use astrological symbols, don't hesitate to use these yourself. The whole idea, remember, is taking the power back. So these symbols are important for you to use on your design and your art and on your literature and on your business cards and so on. Once you understand the iconography and how it affects, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. So we who want to do good work in the world need to also be aware of how colors and symbols and shapes and numbers operate. They're the tools we can use as well. So whenever you see the rising sun on a piece of ad copy, or like this one on the left or on the right with a perfect PC with the light beams pouring out of it, understand that there's a different level of communication happening here. In this advertisement for Media On, you'll notice how not only they're using the rising sun, but they're also using the term on, O-N. On is highlighted. On is the ancient Egyptian name for the sun and for light. And you'll often notice that in many corporate logos. We often say in language, get a move on, or get on with it, or turn the light on, because on was the Egyptian word for the light. On is also one, the birth of all numbers, 1, 2, 3. Well, they all come from one, and on or one meant light. So Pepsi 1 is really Pepsi on, or Pepsi light. That's a very powerful motif. Now on the right we see Wells Fargo's logo here, symbol, get freedom to grow. But of course we see what's known as the sun windows. These are Leo symbols. Every time you see the great window with the light, like here, the great window, the solar window, this is a reference to the old temples of old and the light of the sun. Here's another corporate logo using the same thing, the solar windows. And you'll often see these even in chat shows and television programs. In the background, they'll do set design with this symbolism. We also see the word light written on a lot of beers, not L-I-T-E, but literally L-I-G-H-T, implying that if you drink this alcohol, you're drinking pure light. Of course, that has a very powerful effect on the human unconscious. Here we have another example. We have the Aries Mountains, and we have the solar or Leo concept of the light, the sunlight. Drink Coors because it's bringing light into your body. Or Corona, which already means the light. Here's an advertisement for perfume, Lumiere, the recumbent model, and then the light of the sun. And many corporations use the symbol of the sun. Xerox, Shure, Sears. Sears is an anagram for the word Aries, by the way. Red Ken, which sounds like the Red King. The Red King, of course, is not just in chess, but the Red King of astrology is Aries, the Red King. Del Sol is the sun. Red Dog, Red Wolf, Red Bull. Sierra, spelt backwards, is Aries. It's an anagram. And Red Sand, different corporations using it even in their words. Xerox, which has two X's at each end, and Eros in the middle. So Eros is the god of love. In Shure advertisements, you'll often see the R made quite long or accentuated in some way, or light will suddenly gleam on the letter R in Shure, because Surya or Sure was the sun in Brahmin and India, cultures of India. Surya is the sun. And that company makes good use of that. The word doesn't mean much else in English. For the sign of Virgo, which is the famous hermit in the tarot, Virgo is the virgin, the beautiful female. And also they'll use a lot of womb symbols as well, like they have on the left here. And on the right, the model, Virgo Publishing Company. Volvo is the vulva, Scandinavian for the female generative complex, the vulva, the Volvo. And of course the selling point of that is Cancerian also, that it's the most protective shell. The idea of the safe family car. So it's not only the female Virgo, the vulva, but it's the Cancerian idea of protection and home and safety and family. Volvo logo is Mars and the sun. Here for Virgin Company, Richard Branson's Virgin, we see the same Virgo idea. Here on the right you see the Virgin with the night sky as her background. Here again the stars of the night sky. On the bottom for Evian water, which is again purity. And you see the Masonic compass and the idea of being connected to the heavens and the star. Sagittarius symbolism. 14th card, temperance. And of course we know that Sagittarius is also symbolized more commonly by the famous archer and his bow and arrow. But in the constellation of Sagittarius, we also have Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. So the great dragon. By the way, the constellation of Draco, which stretches all the way from Leo, goes down to Sagittarius. But even within Sagittarius, you have the dragon, or the great serpent of Ophiuchus, the 13th sign. So a lot of serpentine symbolism associated with Sagittarius. And we'll find that turning up in logos like this one, of Draco the dragon, or Ophiuchus, for the movie Dragonfly. Sagittarius is, of course, the horse. And here for Remy Martin, the alcohol, you see the bottle is designed to look like the sun, because Sagittarius is a fire sign. And on the archer, on the male model's arm, you see the archer, because Remy Martin's symbol is the archer, the centaur. And fire signs also represent the male. So this company is well aware of the male principle here. And anytime you see the symbol of the bowman or the archer, Cadillac, for instance, had an advertisement in which, before you even see the car, the actual ad opens with a person firing an arrow, and then the camera turns around and you see the arrow charging down a street. And of course the arrow then becomes the car. So the whole advertisement is centered around Sagittarian motifs. And Capricornian symbol. Capricorn is the cardinal earth sign of the zodiac. In the tarot, we see the goat-headed god representing Capricorn's traits. And the goat we also find is the originator of the word for God in Anglo-Saxon, Scandinavian language, Teutonic language. God, G-O-D, comes from gut, G-O-T-T. So when you see the goat, it was actually the primal symbol for God. Only thing is that the later Christians forgot to change the name. They could demonize all horned animals and could tell you that Satan was evil, but they just forgot a little anecdote. They forgot to change the name of God, because the word God actually means the goat. And Capricornian symbols or Saturnian symbols, like the Nike logo, is actually a tick. Yes, but it's the corner or edge of the ring of Saturn. Magellan are using that, and the car company Saturn, and also as Earthlink. And the black sun, Capricorn's Saturn was called the black sun, and Smithsonian are using the black sun. Nortel are using the ring of Saturn. These are astrological symbols. And of course the Roman version was Kronos, the great god Kronos, from which we get the word crown. We also get chronology and Krona, and there's a TV corporation called Kron, K-R-O-N. The woman's name Karen, for instance, or coronet, all come from the word for Kronos. In fact, even if you see the strong K, that's at the beginning of a lot of radio stations, and also on K-Mart. K is a very Saturnian, Capricornian logo. We have also operating in the world a priesthood of Saturn. Saturn symbols are found in all sorts of areas of life. We know from the Heaven's Gate people that there was a lot of Capricornian symbolism used there, like the Nike logo, the fact that they were all castrated. Castration, you only have to read Greek mythology to know that Saturn castrated his father using the sickle, and those individuals had that happen to them in that cult. They also all dressed in black, which is the color of Capricorn. They wore the Nike symbols. Well, Nike, that tick, is in fact the corner of the edge of the ring of Saturn. Saturn is the black star, literally the black star. Here we have a beer company with that name. Here we have Capri, cigarette company. Capri is just short for Capricorn. Ford Corporation made a car called the Capri, the Ford Capri. We have the Mini. Mini is short for the word Gemini or Gemini, and that's a car that only could seat 2 people, like the twins, the Mini. Aquarius, card number 17 in the tarot, represents the Aquarius, and it's called the star. Now, Aquarius companies very much are Volkswagen. In fact, their logo is the undulating electronic or electrical wave of Aquarius. The Aquarians know that they have the little wave as their symbol. And if you take away the circle from the Volkswagen logo and think in your mind, take away the circle from it, you'll find that the VW is exactly that. It's a little part of that wave. And it's a device that advertisers use. You put a circle around something and you highlight a certain area. But the VW sign is, in fact, the symbol for Aquarius. And Aquarian traits are very much in the VW company. Freedom, excess, teen life, and the spirit of rebellion, which sold the VW Bug and the VW bus. Viacom Corporation also used the Aquarian logo. And AAA. And that's a case in point. We're all a star sign. So learn how to use your own star signs and the colors and the gemstones and the numbers and the vibrations that are connected to your own star sign. Use those, learn to use it, as we're seeing small examples here. We don't have time to go through all the logos in the world. Pisces is ruled by the fish. Pisces, the 12th sign of the zodiac. But in tarot, it's the 18th card. It's called the moon. And it shows a bunch of symbols like the dog and the moon and the two towers. But Pisces represents traits that have anything to do with spirituality or meditation or higher states of consciousness, or at the very basic level, harmony and peace. So here, when you see anyone who's in a meditation pose, like in this advertisement, or anything to do with harmony and relaxation is being advertised to you, realize also that that comes from a particular star sign. And Pisces, of course, the water sign, the mutable water sign. So anytime you see lakes or ocean waves or pools of water, remember that you're dealing with the water signs of Cancer, Scorpio, and primarily Pisces. Now, an important phenomena in astrology are known as the ecliptic and the celestial equator. They make a grand zodiacal cross in the sky. The ecliptic and celestial equator intersect at two hypothetical points. When the sun arrives annually at these cross points, we have the spring and autumnal equinoxes. When the sun moves 90 degrees, 3 months away from those points, we have the two solstices, the winter and the summer. So you can see that the intersection of these two circles in astrology or in astronomy make 4 points throughout the year. And these 4 points are very, very important in astrology. They've been known for thousands of years. But again, in corporations, we find these logos being used where we have the solar cross or the zodiacal cross or the concept of the 4 stars, the 4 positions of astrology. Now, of course, there's a hierarchy of symbols that these advertisers choose. We briefly looked at some of the clearly astrological ones relating to some of the more well-known signs. And that if they're related to fire, water, air, and earth, those also relate to specific areas of our life. And if you see Virgo, also rules the harvest. So wheat fields, they're often shown in cereal advertisements, where there's massive fields of open space. You know, and then Sagittarius also is ruled by the old, aged centaur and the wise man. And you often see that, the grandfather sharing something with his young grandchildren, you know, sitting on the porch in a rocking chair type of motif. Or you'll see Leo, where it's casinos and coins falling down all over the place, and the idea of wealth and luxury and masculinity and regality. So decoding these particular astrological patterns is very interesting in the advertising milieu, and advertisers are aware of this. It's a very competitive business. So a lot of their researchers take them into occult fields, into the realm of Sabianism and talismans. They know it's worked on our unconscious mind for thousands of years. They know that in our race memory, these things are very beloved. So why not bring them out and use it? It doesn't matter that it's just selling newspapers or, you know, toothpaste or watches or something else that might, you know, be only for our material needs. If you can use a very powerful spiritual motif, so much the better. Here we find that the pyramid is probably the most, with the sun, the pyramid is the most chosen and highly ranked corporate symbol. So many corporations, from Sprint to Citgo, to Casey Warner, to the design of buildings, use the symbol of the pyramid. You find it on the flags of the world. You find it on secret societies like MI5. We saw it on the American $1 bill, but you find it being used on life insurance companies and on banks and in all manner of areas. Here it is on Delta. Delta, of course, is an Egyptian concept of the Delta of Egypt and the letter delta, the D. But they're using the symbol of the red and blue degrees of Freemasonry and the pyramid. Here, Access Hollywood has the pyramid with the capstone missing at the top. A very powerful Freemasonic symbol with a 5-pointed star of occultism. Here are an award. On the left is the American Business Awards. This is an award given to the most proficient and upwardly mobile businesses of the world. But guess what the actual symbol that they're given is? It's a pyramid, an Illuminati pyramid. On the right we see the same idea of the 3 striations in the pyramid, and then a man ascending a series of steps, just like you would on a pyramid, and going through a door that leads to the sun in the sky. Very powerful motif, spiritual motifs coming out of the ancient world. Here's Microsoft telling you to start here. Yes, and on the left you can see the pyramid ascending up, and that we're meant to start on the bottom and make our way up the pyramid. Here's another corporate design, especially in the technical world. You'll see much use of this pyramid. Because as we know from my work on Atlantis, alien visitation, there's an agenda behind the whole Silicon Revolution in the corporate world, and how the Illuminati and the Freemasons and the mystical secret societies of the world are covertly operating behind the technological world. And they can prove it to you using these powerful occult symbols from their own societies. The top of a pyramid is called the keystone or the cornerstone. Masons understand that term. Here's a beer with the name of Keystone. Here we have an absolute for vodka, the pyramid, the obelisk, and the oval. On the right you see the pyramid, the sun, and the serpentine river. Well, there's no river near the real pyramid, so what's this river all about? Well, it's a black pyramid, and we have the serpentine river. But don't be going calling up your merchants. It's like the right-wing Christian fanatics who realize, yes, there's something wrong with Procter & Gamble logo because it's occult, and they're probably right. But then the phones are ringing off the hook at Procter & Gamble main office. They're just merchants. They just want to sell whatever they want to sell. You're looking in the wrong direction. You've understood that there's something subliminal and possibly even satanic going on. That's right. But if you wave the placards under the wrong building, what do you think is going to happen? The individuals that are responsible for this are the occult literate people in Madison Avenue and other like institutions and businesses. Here, Bass Beer has the red pyramid, and Bass is an old Hebrew word, Abbas for father, or Egyptian Bast, the cat goddess. American Online not only using the pyramid, but 2 crescent moons, no less. Crescent moons were sacred to the cult of the moon, the lunar cult, but they're also using the striations of the sun to back it up. Draper Fishers are using the black pyramid and the globe of the sun. Pyramid Ales, the Sun Fest, using the pyramid. Camel Corporation are using the